Welcome, everyone. Welcome to another edition of Remixing Politics and Culture with me, your host, Pam. I am a public relations and marketing professional with a passion for social justice, voter advocacy, and culture. And tonight, we're going to discuss the student protests, the purpose of these protests, um, and the police involvement of these peaceful protests, Gaza, and our First Amendment rights. I must tell you right up front, I thought I had a student um, from Columbia University, and she contacted me back yesterday and told me that she was unable to actually talk to anyone, that there was a moratorium on speaking up to the media about any of the events. She was very much involved in peaceful protests. She got arrested, and but she didn't suffer any penalties at the university. So as soon as she is able, she told me that she would come back. So my guests tonight are no longer students, but they are observers, and very concerned about what has been going on the college campuses within their personal vicinities. First up, I have Zainab Balak or Baluch. I'm going to get her to pronounce her last name for me. She describes herself, I'm going to bring her up. She describes herself as a truth seeker with a passion to increase our collective consciousness through social impact technology that dismantles systems of oppression. She is the co-founder of YAP, Young Americans Protest, which is a civic innovation startup bringing together community builders, organizations, and zillennials to remix strategies to increase civic engagement. Zainab was the youngest woman of color and first Muslim to run for mayor in the South. Zainab was featured in America Inside Out on the National Geographic documentary with Katie Couric. Welcome back to the show, Zainab.
Hi, thank you, Pam. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. My next guest is Renee Schalk. I was going to introduce her, but I don't see her backstage. I think she's having some technical difficulty. So next up, I'm going to bring Latrice Davis. And Latrice is no stranger to the show. She is one of my most reoccurring panelists. Latrice is a senior court clerk at Queens County Criminal Court.
Correct.
She's a proud member appointed to the Queens Community Board 6. She has served on the Aging, Social Services, Disabilities Committee from 2021 to 2023. She is currently on the Land Use, Housing, Landmarks Committee, the Transportation Street Safety Committee. She's busy. And she was named committee chairwoman in April of 2022 for the Committee for Those Without Shelter. Latrice is also a former journalist with the Associated Press. Welcome back to the show, Latrice.
As always, thank you for having me. And one more thing, I am a proud alumna of New York University, which is a few miles south of Columbia.
All right. And Zainab is a proud alumna of North Carolina State University.
And UNC.
Yeah, and UNC. Yeah. Okay. So, all right. So, ladies, where do we begin? Zainab, what I'm gonna do is do a round robin to get your feelings about what's been going on. And Zainab, I'm going to start with you. Tell me what it is that you've been observing in the protest amongst some of your peers at your former institutions, and if you've had any contact with the student protesters, what have they told you, etc.
Yeah, so I've been observing the protests that have been happening weekly in Raleigh since October. And, most of it has been met with not that much like police aggression for the most part, other than in recent times. But in Chapel Hill, observing the student protests, was very different. You know, I went there and, you know, they first off had already raided the encampment at 5:30 a.m. in the morning. And by the time we got there later, the police weren't on the scene yet, but I was there when they came and they stormed at the students, literally came in a force, stormed at the students, had their pepper spray already out, started pepper spraying the students that were around the flagpole. And it was just a complete, like, a complete aggression, a complete act of violence on students that were, you know, they're against the genocide that's happening. They want their universities to divest from companies or products that, you know, are complicit in this genocide. And, you know, they have made demands, have been trying to talk to university officials, things like that. But instead of, you know, handling that, the universities have chosen to send out militant police forces against their own students, with knowing that there's a very high risk of violence that could come from that. So I'm pretty disappointed, or very, I don't know, I feel like their response right now is just very shameful on doing that to your own students, faculty. So yeah.
Yeah, and I have some stories to tell about UNC myself. We've got Renee on here. So, Renee, can you hear me? I don't know what is going on. I think Renee, her mic is on.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, good. Okay,
I
good,
can,
good, good. You can hear
I
me?
can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Okay, so I didn't get to introduce you before. Renee is a graduate of Columbia University with a degree in sociology. She is a mom of 4 adults and 6-year-old triplets. She is super busy. Okay. Um, Renee was a candidate for Williamston County, Texas, Precinct 3, Justice of the Peace. She relocated from Texas back to New York City in 2022, and in 2023 began practicing as a doula. She is a lifelong Democrat and has assisted one of President Biden's 2020 campaign staffers, and so much more within the Democratic Party. Welcome back to the show, Renee. Okay. So, Latrice, I'm going to go to you next about your
Okay,
observation.
thank you, Sam.
Okay. Okay, there's a bit of a delay, I see. Okay, so Renee, Latrice, I'm going to ask you the same question as I asked Zainab. What are your observations and thoughts about these protests and across America and at your alma mater in
Well,
New
I
York?
haven't physically been to any of the protests. I've been following a lot of it on through regular media as well as social media. And I couldn't help but draw a parallel to Occupy Wall Street, which took place a few miles south of my alma mater in Zuccotti Park in Lower Manhattan. So there's all these parallels that come to mind for me. And I'm sure the students, they're united in their goal. I guess my question for the leaders or whomever's leading the protest, because it seems to be decentralized, like,
Yes.
what's the end game? Because one of the things I've been reading about, like with the Columbia students and the moratorium, they clamped down on not speaking with the media because at least I have read there's threats of expulsion. And here it is, these same students some of whom are about to graduate from college, here it is, they didn't get to walk down the aisle for graduation because of the pandemic, and now they face the possibility of not walking down the aisle again because of this. So those are the things that come to mind for me. But in terms of what they're protesting about, this isn't new. This is history repeating itself. You had college students protesting the Vietnam War in the 60s and 70s.
Mhm.
So what we're seeing in terms of the police response, it's overkill, but at the same time, it's not surprising.
Definitely overkill. Renee, give us your thoughts, your observations of your beloved alma mater, Columbia. I don't know if you heard me. I had a student that wanted to come on and talk with us tonight, and but she told me that there was a moratorium and she could not speak. And so,
I graduated
you know,
from
we're going to get
university in the 80s.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Tell us your thoughts and your observations of the protests and whatnot, because you're
About the
too in New
protests is
York
that
as
some of the
well.
protests.
What did you say?
That's correct. And so what I wanted to say about the protesting at Columbia for the pretty much the same issues for since the 80s. The only difference is South Africa.
Mm-hmm.
Is something that we protest against apartheid, and then we got that
Right.
passed.
Okay. I think we're having a little problem with your I think it's with the internet. I think. I'm pretty sure that's what it is.
Okay.
Yeah, I was of that generation that protested all in the president's face at the University of Michigan against apartheid. I was protesting and raising hell and all that too. We didn't do encampments or whatever, but I almost think that protests are really a rite of passage if you're in college, because you should be, we have the right. This nation was built on the right of freedoms of choice and wanting freedom from crap. And so we made that happen, right, as a nation. And so likewise, we should be able, our students should be able to exercise their of speech. I was told, Zainab, and this might ring a bell to you. I was told by an eyewitness who actually filmed the situation that some frat boys beat up an Asian student defending his girlfriend's honor while they were simply walking across campus. They were not involved in the protests or anything. They were minding their business, and the cops did absolutely nothing to stop it. Um, they were simply walking, because they, and my thing is that, is it now that other activities are able to happen because, oh well, those are the bad guys and we're the good guys because we have the American flag or Israeli flag, and nothing will happen to us. Likewise, at the University of Mississippi, there was an African American woman who was protesting, peacefully protesting, and the frat boys across the way from her with their flags and stuff, and they even had Confederate flags and things like that. They were making monkey faces at her, calling her names and things like that. What do you think about? Had you heard about this at all? In your observations from some of the students, Zainab, had you heard any of that?
I've seen videos, and I'm not surprised at all, because when I was there was a group of, I guess, Zionist protesters, pro-Israel protesters. They were kind of not completely clear in what they were, protesting. But later on, it came about, that it was a frat, and they were trying to make it that they like somehow protected America because they defended the flag. So this, and they were there to antagonize. Like, that was their goal. And, there's been shown that there's been some, like, Republican money going into, really putting out some of these, like, funding some of these types of antagonizers to derail the movement. And I don't know, I feel like when I was there, I didn't feel safe being in their area. But I did film some of it. But these students were not like, there's this sense of superiority. So you know that, if you say the wrong thing, if you look them in the wrong eye, they're going to say something very, like, hateful. So it's just weird to see students come out with that sense, like, of that they can just say that it's okay to say racist
Right.
Xenophobic slurs right now, and that comes from being empowered by a bigger cause or institution.
Right. 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 Renee, did you hear that? She's gone again.
Oh no.
She says it's raining in New York.
It is.
And she's having issues with her internet. Latrice, had you heard about some of, well, in North Carolina, we heard about all this big fundraising. Somebody got as much as, was it over $400,000?
I've heard similar things on social media, and I am definitely well aware of what happened at Ole Miss with the young black woman and the white guys who were, trying to intimidate her. It was all over the internet, so I am aware of that. And it just goes to show how issues are being conflated, because these guys walking around with the Confederate flag,
Right.
that has nothing to do with the Mideast conflict.
Nothing.
And it makes me question the level of education that they're getting in comparison to the amount of ignorance that they're swimming in, because they're conflating issues. One has absolutely nothing to protect America. America's not in danger. Well, it is. I mean, democracy is in danger, but that's a whole separate conversation. Right now, we're just sticking with the Middle East.
Right.
But I think the fact that, I've been reading about outside agitators and who's funding the counter protesters, that to me highlights the importance of these protesters staying focused. Like, okay, what is the end game? And they need to be specific. Like, okay, I've heard they want the universities to divest.
Right.
Okay. So whatever that means, let's say, for the sake of the argument, Colombia agrees to divest from Israel. Then what?
Right.
The students need to have an answer for that, or the protesters, I should say, should have an answer for that. In terms of these groups possibly being infiltrated. I mean, again, that's nothing new.
Nothing.
I mean, you hope that's not going on, but who's to say? But again, that speaks to the importance of being focused, having a plan. And okay, they build these encampments, but it's like, okay, at least with NYU, finals are this week and graduation is going to be next week. So what happens the week after, when most of these students go home for the summer?
Right.
So I think they really need to, that's the storyline I'm looking at. Like, okay, what comes next?
And that is a very legitimate question. I will say, and Zainab, I want to kind of have your thoughts on this. At USC, at the University of Southern California, their protests really got lit by the valedictorian, is a Muslim young lady.
Yeah.
They decided, oh, well, we don't want her to speak because...
And they were wrong for canceling commencement ceremonies. Not to interrupt you, but I do want to put that out there. The school, in my opinion, the school was wrong for canceling graduation for that. They should not have done that. By doing that, they only made the situation worse.
Made it worse. And that's what really, they said, that really inflamed their protest. What are your thoughts on that, Zainab? And have you heard anything through your community about that?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think it's ridiculous that instead of just being the valedictorian, her earned space to speak, that they had to cancel a commencement that was for, I think, almost 65,000 people. Like,
it's insane.
It's insanity. And I think it just shows you the level that our institutions are going to go to protect an apartheid state. I think for me, it just showed how deep this was and how far universities or people at play are able to go to really silence any type of, conversation or acknowledgement of the genocide.
Yeah. And it's just, I was shocked. In fact, so shocked that I really didn't believe that had happened, because it didn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't make any sense.
I mean, it's like nothing is making any sense. Renee, your thoughts on that? Renee?
Honestly, ladies, I am so disturbed. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes,
I am so disturbed by what's going on the campuses that I'm really disturbed. Like I said, these issues that are going on with the Israeli government is not new. We've been protesting since the 80s about what was going on in the West Bank, and because of nothing was really done about it. And I know there's a lot of people and scholars and experts who want to say that it was, it was on both sides that didn't want to have these the two-state solution to become a thing. However, Bibi Netanyahu has been in power for such a long time. His goal right now is to stay in office. He's got an extreme right wing that their goal is to stay in office. And so their goal is not to work for the Palestinian people or a two-state solution. So I'm going to go ahead and let you ladies go ahead and finish that thought.
Yeah. We have a comment from Zachary Clipper. He says Israel was losing the PR war, so now they are rebranding the protesters as pro-Palestinian and equating all Palestinians with Hamas. That is true. Well, they would do that anyway. And the thing is, guys, I was asking Latrice this question because I failed to look it up. Who was the person that introduced legislation talking about if you say anything against Israel, then you're anti-Semite and it's against the law? Who introduced that? Does anybody know? Renee, do you know?
I don't know off the top of my head, but I know that that's a dark cloud hanging over this whole situation.
Right. And I really, it's just so, I think that what we have to do too, we've got to get realistic and get real about how Israel came about in 1948. And all of that, we really have to get really realistic about all of that. We're not saying that the atrocities that have happened to the Jewish people are just awful. It's awful. But by the same token, you can't annihilate a group of people.
I'm not sure who,
because you were prosecuted or whatever. You can't. You're doing the same thing over again, and that's two wrongs don't make a right. An eye for an eye leaves us all blind, and it just doesn't work. It just doesn't work. And it was Renee that mentioned Bibi Netanyahu. I really, to my heart, I really feel, in my humble opinion, that he allowed that crisis on October 7th to happen, because there is no way that he did not know the intelligence that they have. Those people live in a police state. How could they not know that they were going to be attacked? The U.S. does intelligence. They have their intelligence.
Actually,
yes, Renee. Go ahead, Renee.
Actually, Pam, what I was going to say is that Netanyahu really did know this attack was coming. He knew it. He was warned a year ahead of time. He also funded Hamas through other Arab states so that he can keep them in place so that there will be no two-state solution. That's what people are not looking at. Netanyahu does not want a two-state.
No, he doesn't. He wants the annihilation
of status quo. He needs to stay in office. Democratic state, but
he yeah. Zach says Netanyahu is the kosher Trump.
Oh God.
Yes, that's true. That is absolutely true. He is exactly like Trump. He is not trying to get out of office. He's trying to maintain power, because once he steps out, he's going to go to jail.
Right. And the thing is, the people wanted him out. What other way for him to stay in but to start a war, and knowing doggone well that once something happens, the U.S. was going to step in. He knew that. We all knew that. We all knew it.
But that brings me to another point in terms of the protest. And I'm not opposed to the protest. Hey, we don't have First Amendment rights. But my thing is, okay, we also have an election coming up in 6 months.
Right.
And the idea that, again, speaking for myself, my tax dollars are subsidizing the mass killing of innocent civilians, which
Yeah.
I am not okay with.
Right.
So neither like Biden nor Trump have really addressed that elephant in the room.
No.
I mean, like we already know what Trump is about, and I'm not going to get into him, but
Yeah.
I just feel like, okay, what is our plan for dealing with Israel? Because sometimes I feel like, are we Israel's ally or are we Israel's puppet?
I think we're a little bit of both. I think we're a little bit of both. I think that it doesn't matter what, Biden came out strongly and told BB, stop it. You must stop this. This has to stop. Stop, stop, stop. And what does he say? I'm not going to stop.
But then here's the thing. Who's paying for these bombs that are being dropped on God? We are. So Biden shouldn't have to go to Netanyahu and say, hey, stop the war. Biden should just simply pull the plug and say, you're not getting any more funding from us until you stop killing these people.
Well,
if you truly, if I was Biden, I would say to Netanyahu, if you're serious about peace, you and the opposition, and it doesn't have to be Hamas, because Hamas is not an elected, government, but I would like to see the Palestinians have someone who's advocating for them. I don't know who that would be, but y'all need to sit down and hash this out. Y'all been fighting for generations. For many Palestinians and Jewish people, this is all they know.
Yeah. Zainab, what were you going to say?
I was just going to say that Biden said, we were telling Netanyahu to stop, but then he sent $26 billion more to him in aid. So the president can say whatever he wants, but it's very
clear. What he does.
Yeah, it's what he does. And they would not be able to do what they're doing right now if it wasn't for the US, if it wasn't for our tax money, if it wasn't for the billions that we've sent over. We are completely complicit in this genocide because we are funding it. And even though people can say that Biden is taking a stronger stance of Netanyahu, I don't think he has. I think the strongest stance is the fact that they just sent over $26 billion more. So this war is going to continue. But at the end of the day, I don't know. I think that maybe in terms of this is a war economy. So we're seeing just how extreme the powers that be are willing to go to really, demolish or extradite Palestine. I mean, really demolish it. And they don't look like they want a two-state solution at all.
No, I would agree with you. Zachary says we are Israel's puppet. AIPAC is one of the biggest donors, right and left. That is true. I want to, one of the other things that has been going on in this that the protests have been bringing out is how the mainstream media has been covering these cases. And the language that's being used is really quite telling. And I'm really disgusted by it because it's not fair and balanced. It just is not. And I've got a clip here that Latrice had shared with me earlier, and I want to play it for the audience and for you guys. Let me see. Okay. All right. Do you see it?
Yes, I see it.
Okay, I'm going to play it now.
His risk of a second attack massive. Mike is still living in the red. Very high risk of another heart attack or stroke. He doesn't know with his risk factors, his LDL-C, bad cholesterol, is still too high. The recommended level is below 55. Are you living in the red? Get in the know. Learn how to get a free LDL-C test at attackheartdisease.com.
Israa University, Gaza's youngest university, was established in 2014 with a simple goal: ensuring poverty would not stand in the way of any Palestinian that wanted to pursue a college degree. Israt was known for its towering main building and archway entrance, constructed as a love letter to Islamic architecture. The university was actually set to mark its 10th anniversary this year, and to celebrate that milestone, the school planned to open a public museum on campus, housing more than 3,000 artifacts, including relics from the Roman Empire to more modern pieces of Palestinian history and culture. However, Israt University and all of the history it housed within its walls has now been destroyed. On January 17th, the Israeli Defense Forces demolished the university's main building, reducing it to rubble in a matter of seconds. The Israeli military initially tried to justify this action, claiming that the campus had been, quote, used by Hamas for military activity and that there were concerns the group might use it to attack Israeli forces. But later, the Israeli military admitted there had been flaws in the operational process, including in the decision to destroy the entire building. However, Israt University was not alone in Gaza. According to an NBC News analysis, at least 5 of Gaza's 7 major universities have been destroyed or damaged since Israel began its bombardment of the Gaza Strip. And as Professor Rashid Khalidi, a historian at Columbia University, noted, quote, when you destroy these kinds of institutions, you are not fighting Hamas. You are fighting the existence of the Palestinians. You are fighting their capability to have memory, to have records, and to be educated. UN experts are now sounding the alarm, expressing concern that these attacks on universities in Gaza are part of a much larger effort to comprehensively destroy the Palestinian education system, an action known as scholasticide. For almost 7 months, the war has halted the studies of at least 88,000 students, according to the Palestinian Authority's Ministry of Higher Education. But if you've turned on television here in America, it is apparently American universities that are under attack. As pro-Palestinian anti-war protests continue to spread to college campuses across the country, coverage of these demonstrations has dominated mainstream media. Here's just a really small glimpse at how these protesters have been described. Watch.
I'm reminded of January the 6th. That's what this looks like to me.
This might look like January 6th, but it's 1,000 times worse.
Charlottesville was a little peanut, and the hate wasn't the kind of hate that you have here.
Harkening back to the 1930s in Europe, and I do not say that lightly.
Keep marching for Hamas, kids.
This is not what students bring to school.
Hamas is here.
Even the notion of an encampment is a physical threat.
We have a terrorist group marching in New York right now.
They're dumb and or unattractive. Take it to the bank.
They have been brainwashed by TikTok to believe that Israel's actually committing a genocide.
What's happening on college campuses is rooted in anti-Semitism. They are embracing the rhetoric and the ideology of Hamas.
Did that negotiating with terrorists work for them?
We are going to have fascism as a result of these protests.
We are going to have fascism as a result of these protests. It's absolute hysteria from the media. Outrage over protesters setting up tents, occupying buildings, or breaking windows, as Gaza's entire education system lies in ruins. U.S. media have become obsessed with this manufactured idea of violence sweeping across American campuses, all while failing to cover the very real violence that has decimated an entire generation's access to education. But the media isn't doing this alone. Here in New York City, Mayor Eric Adams has given them an assist, making himself, as the Nation's Jeet here describes, the public face of the nationwide campus crackdown on pro-Palestinian activism. At a press conference this week, Adams attempted to rationalize the NYPD's crackdown on Columbia University, claiming he's preventing young people from being, quote, radicalized by professionals. New York City Police Deputy Commissioner Tariq Shepard has gone in on the baseless fear-mongering as well, touting bike chains. Yeah, bike chains, literally bike chains sold at a discount by Columbia University as some kind of sinister weapon that has been brought in by outsiders. If you want to talk about sinister weapons inflicting mass destruction on a campus, what about the 300-plus mines that the Israeli military used to blow up Israt University back in January? It's as simple as this. You cannot claim to be worried about violence at universities, about disruptions to students' education, about safety on college campuses, and ignore what is taking place in Gaza. And you cannot be more concerned about the act of students protesting than you are with the very issues that they're protesting against, and what the UN Special Rapporteur on Human Rights has described as a genocide.
Okay, that was a lot. That was a lot. And he said, I couldn't say it better than what it was displayed there. And this is what we're up against. And it just drives me crazy that we are mixing words and playing with, gaslighting us in our faces as if we didn't see things being blown up, and we didn't see babies, and we didn't see mass graves, and we didn't see all of these things.
But if you go back again, like none of this is new. Like think back to the whole fake news and the whole alternative facts. Like it basically, the Republican Party has planted the seeds of distrust, and the public trust, which is journalism. So now people, this goes to the Columbia students being wary of talking to reporters about what's going on, because they're understandably concerned about, hey, the reporters may not get what they're saying right. And when I was in journalism, I took that seriously, because if I was putting my name on it, that meant I was prepared to stand behind it. So if I was talking to someone or interviewing someone, it's in my interest to get their story right. I don't want to have to see a correction the next day or whatever, or get some complaints about how the nuances are missing or what have you. And I think that's why a lot of people are understandably concerned about discussing this subject. I mean, it's very much a hot potato. It's always been a hot potato. And I just know, for me, when I saw that piece, I just thought, yeah, that's not the whole story. Because in terms of that university being blown up in January, that happened in January. I didn't find out about that until recently.
I didn't either.
Why is that?
Did you know, Zainab, did you know?
I know that there are no universities left in Gaza.
Yeah, and they don't have a hospital. Do they even have a hospital left?
I
don't.
They had one, and I after Shifa, I don't think they had any hospitals or.
So how are and can you imagine if you've got everything blown up? What's the sewer system like? What is the disease impact because of human waste and all of that type of stuff? These are just very. How inhumane can you be? How inhumane?
Well, I have another question. Last month, the World Central Kitchen, Jose Andres' organization, 7 humanitarian workers were killed.
Yes.
They're just there to provide food, a very basic human right. Because people got to eat. Whatever your religion, whomever you are, humans, animals, people got to eat, and yet they're not safe. And you're not really hearing about that. The humanitarian workers who are in danger. I donate to Doctors Without Borders, and I get, messages from them every now and then about how, their facilities are under attack. And it's like, really? Like, who are the Doctors Without Borders?
Why would any sane person do that to Doctors Without Borders?
I don't have an answer for that, but I feel like stories like that need to be amplified, and those situations are getting lost in the source. Whereas the idea of these protests being ultra violent and kids being unsafe, I've been on campus recently, and I've never felt unsafe. I never felt my life was in danger. Unlike Columbia, NYU's campus is decentralized, so you're not going to have encampments like you would there, but I never felt like if I went on campus, I'm taking my life into my hands. I've never felt that.
Right. Yes.
And I agree with Zachary's statement. I do believe the majority of Jewish people do want to see peace.
They do
want to see. I'm going to say that's the one thing I'm going to say that's not disputed is nobody.
What was it, Renee?
Pam, the one thing I want to say that's not disputed is nobody's disputing the 30,000. I said the one thing that's not disputed is nobody's disputing the 30,000 plus Palestinians who were killed unnecessarily. And nobody is disputing that, not even the Israelis, not even the United States, not the international government. Nobody is disputing that. But this is the other thing. Protesters are not saying, let's wipe Israel off the map.
No.
That's not what they're saying. They're
No.
saying Israel has a right to be there. However, Gazan people do not need to be punished for what Hamas is doing.
Right.
I mean, but it also, I think, requires us to go back in history and look at 1948, right? Like like Hamas didn't just come. Like I think there's so much to be said about Hamas, because on one end it's like, oh, they committed this act of terrorism on October 7th, but then there's the other hand of like this occupation has been going on for 75 years, and people in Palestine have been subjected to segregation, the worst forms of violence, and the highest amount of surveillance of any country in the whole world. They already had 80% of the population living on humanitarian aid. And I think there is something to said about, this whole war with Hamas. I think that is propaganda in itself, because I think that there are, bad actors also funding Hamas. Like I think that you have Israeli and American funding also with Hamas, which is why they can't destroy it. Because, if you're spending billions and billions and billions of dollars just because they have the best surveillance and technology in the world, I don't believe that they don't know where Hamas is and that they aren't able to find them. And instead, that's a lie that we've been told, so that civilians and infrastructure can be bombed and killed and destroyed in the meantime while Hamas is being found. So I just think that this is a very difficult and complicated war, because you kind of have the same actors on both sides, and the main motive is to kill Palestinians and destroy their infrastructure and make it completely unlivable for them anywhere. These are completely innocent people. Like they have done nothing to, like, there's a whole culture, whole beautiful people being destroyed because of profit and greed and corruption.
And I want to pick up on that and go one step further. Assuming that Israel achieves its goal of destroying Palestine, and notice how the Arab neighbors aren't so eager to take the Palestinians in. And there's a reason for that as well. Like, okay, if I'm a Palestinian and I decide to flee to Egypt or Jordan or another neighboring country, they have their own problems. And in terms of bad faith actors funding both sides, I definitely think I definitely wouldn't put it past that to be the case, because again, who benefits from keeping this war going? Hamas is getting money from somewhere.
Yeah,
like in terms of their ability to pull off these surprise attacks, again, that information is coming from somewhere.
And look, they did it from the land, air, and sea. And I'm like, dude, how y'all do all of that and BB didn't know? And their surveillance surveilled 24/7. It doesn't
proven that he knows.
Yeah, of course he knows.
He knew. He allowed it.
He did. He absolutely did. Absolutely did.
And I agree on the Arab countries point. I think Saudi Arabia has shown to be actually an ally of Israel, and it's been very disappointing, just as a Muslim, seeing Muslim countries and how they're reacting to this. And I don't know, just like it puts Palestine in a very desperate place.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's really. I don't know what the solution is really. I really, I don't know. I really don't know. I just know that when I've looked up the history and what have you, and when you look at, I was listening to some old YouTube videos of Truman, and he talked about the decision he had to make, and we just had to get it done. And the U.S. was the first country to recognize Israel in the UN when they came up on board as a new state and what have you. And of course, we began to when they had what was the Yom Kippur War, we provided them with weapons or whatever, monies to help them and whatnot. And so then the die was cast. And so we've been doing that ever since. But it's just frustrating. I don't know. I can understand why the Jewish people felt like they needed to be in their own place because they were being persecuted so horrifically. I get that. But by the same token, I don't see how anybody could think it was going to be okay if all of a sudden a flood of people came into an area and they said, okay, we're taking our homeland back and you got to get out. Well, it's our homeland too. So I don't know how you figure you're going to make that right. Renee, can you figure it out? Renee?
Hey, Pam, I want to say this. Yeah, I want to say this, that I understand why Jewish people feel like they're being attacked, because there is a lot of anti-Semitism out there.
Yes.
And I get that, because there's a lot of racism on Black folks out there, and I get that.
And
however,
Muslim people,
I do not believe majority of the protesters who are anti-Semitic.
No,
they're outsiders that chant all of this, just like what happened in Virginia when the Tiki Torchy people came in and started saying Jews would not replace us. That was not what that protest was about. That's what happened to get the media attention, but that's not who the people that were protesting were propagating. So I understand that it is media feed to want to focus on all the outside stuff, but not really the message and what is really going with this. Most of the protests have been peaceful. They have been. And yes, there are people who are anti-Semitic that go and gravitate to different protests. It's just like there are racists that go, white supremacists that go and navigate to protests for Black Lives Matter or any other civil rights protests that might be going on. But that is not what the protest is about. That is not the majority of the protesters. I'm upset about is that the mainstream media has lost their direction. They're sounding like the real right when they start comparing these protesters to J6. Insurrectionists, student protests to J6 insurrectionists. That's a problem.
Right.
These kids are nothing like the J6 insurrectionists. The J6 insurrectionists were out there trying to stop people's freedom. It's
right.
Trying to stop people's freedoms and rights to the Constitution and taking away this. These protesters are trying to fight for freedom. They're trying to fight for the freedom of these innocent babies that are in incubators who are dying, these children who are starving in the streets. They're trying to fight for women in other countries because we are not checking Bibi. Netanyahu's problem. Even Israelis know that Netanyahu is the problem. They don't want him there. 80% of their people do not want Netanyahu there. So when this country gets on board with the rest of the international community is done with him.
Yes, they are, and we should be too.
And they're done with this nonsense.
And
we have to get on board and check Netanyahu. Period.
Yeah.
I just want to say something real quick about the whole January 6th analogy.
Yeah.
I find it interesting when I saw that report. It's like, wait a minute, will call these students calling for the Columbia president to be fired.
No.
Like when you think back to last year with Claudine Gay at Harvard and the woman from the University of UPenn, like these students are not asking for their university presidents to be tossed from power.
No.
It's the politicians who are doing that in Congress, grandstanding, saying, "Oh, now the president of Columbia should be shown the door."
Right.
NYU's president Linda Mills, she just came on board last year. She hasn't even been in office. She hasn't even been in her post for a year. But the students are not the ones calling for these presidents to go.
No.
They just simply want divestment. And like I said, that's all well and good, but then what? You know, so, but the January 6th language, I found it's a toss between insulting and comical because, again, those people who stormed the Capitol, they were not storming the Capitol in the name of freedom.
No,
they were storming the Capitol in the name of the opposite.
Right.
Anything but freedom.
Right. The other thing that's so strange is that we are getting all cut. What I am really resentful against Bibi Netanyahu is that his mess, and I call it his mess because he created this crap, as far as I'm concerned, with with the war and whatnot, is that it's impacting us. And we didn't ask for this stuff. This is nuts. Absolutely crazy. Absolutely crazy.
Well, if you turn the clock back to like the late 70s through the mid 90s, basically when Yitzhak Rabin was assassinated, he was the former prime minister of Israel. When he was assassinated, he was Israel's closest chance to peace. And I don't pretend to be an expert on these matters. I'm not. But even I know, hey, like, if Israel really wanted peace, they could have it. They could have it.
I think so. And I dare say, I think it might take a woman, not like a gnome, not like a Christy gnome who shoots puppies, but a woman who has some real empathy and smarts to do this, because the men have just been disappointing. I'm tired of it. We need a revolution of the most biggest kind, really. We really do.
Well, I don't know that the woman, I don't know how the Israeli government is set up, so I don't want to speak too much on that.
Yeah.
But the women who hold positions in parliament, are they any better than Netanyahu?
I don't know, but we had one, Golda Meir, years and years ago. There's a story of her looking at an Arab woman gathering her things and moving very slowly and poorly, and she and this Arab woman eyes locked, and she felt great empathy, and they both cried. And I think that what has happened is that the people have lost all of their humanity, and when you lose that, yes, the Jews were persecuted something horrifically in the with Hitler and what have you, right? But by the same token, do they see what they're doing to essentially their cousins, their brothers and sisters in Gaza? Do they see?
Well, I think they do see it. I think some of them just don't care.
But that's the point.
Because the thing is, Jewish people are not the only group to have been marginalized in life. They're not the only group to have experienced oppression.
I know that because we're part of that group. But what I'm saying is that I'm only looking at them in this particular situation. How can they not remember? If they look and remember about their past and their history, how could they, in good conscience, think that it would be okay for them to do something similar?
That's a question for Benjamin Netanyahu.
That's my whole question. How can you not see your lack of humanity when you complain, and rightfully so, and bemoan the lack of humanity that was shown to you? You cannot do it to another person. You cannot. And
not only that, but you cannot do it to people who have done nothing to you.
Exactly. And even if you try to, again, what does the word say? An eye for an eye leaves us both blind. period. Okay, so I mean, it's just crazy. It's a lot more people in the chat saying stuff. Let's see. Okay. I was fortunate to have a friend in Minnesota provide video of George Floyd reaction. Oh God, this is what this is kind
say that all hey,
what means that they're thinking more about war than about peace. They have mandatory military service.
Pam, I also wanted to say that there's a monkey.
Keep talking, Renee. You keep stopping instead of finishing. Keep talking.
Hey Pam, I'm sorry. There's another monkey wrench in this whole thing.
What is it?
Yeah, there's a whole monkey wrench in this. There's Iran. That's another issue. Iran.
That's exhausting.
Iran throws a whole nother monkey wrench into what's going on in the Middle East.
Yeah. Yeah, I forgot about them just that quick. I don't know why, but it's just, I think it's getting depressing because it's too much. It's like, come on,
Israel is attacking multiple countries at one time, so you're going to see unrest in the region because they literally have multiple wars going on right now where they are attacking Lebanon, they're attacking Syria, they are attacking Iran. So I think,
and who's paying for all of this? Because those bombs ain't free. That aircraft ain't free. Who's paying for all this?
Our tax money.
It's sick. Zachary, you speaking wisdom. You speaking truth to power.
I think Zachary.
Yeah, is Zachary?
I agree. Zachary's got a point. This is not good for Israel because what it's doing is creating a whole nother group of people that may not be called Hamas, but they're going to turn into terrorists for Israel.
Right.
So, Zachary, you're exactly right.
Where do you think Hamas came from? If you cage people and you treat them like the bottom of the crap of your shoe, what do you think they're gonna think of you, and how are they gonna treat you back? Come on now. That's nature, right? That's nature. Only Jesus said you turn the other cheek. The rest of us are like do that. Okay, that's not gonna happen. Yeah. So then let's see, I'm trying to mess up her name again. Zainab. Have any of your student friends said anything to you of what they feel that the actual outcome is going to be?
I think that, like, for example, at UNC, they have very clear demands, right? Like, they demanded the divestment of specifically 3 products at UNC: Sabra, Hummus, HP, and Caterpillar, and from study abroad programs in Israel. And then they demanded a commission to be set up to report on how UNC will take short and long-term steps to divest from the Israeli apartheid. And then they demanded that UNC be transparent about the UNC Systems investment vehicle and want them to dedicate themselves to having more socially responsible investing SRI guidelines. So they have a plan, a very clear plan of action of the things that they're trying to succeed. I'm not sure exactly where things stand with the university on addressing them, but I mean, they called the police. They authorized the police to go in there and militarize the students. I think it is a good question. Like, I think about it too, because I think students are going to go back home, and I think there's an effort here to organize in both local, like, students' localities where they live, but also continue organizing for when school starts back up, or trying to get into these procedural things that can be done when school starts up or even during the summer. So I think it's a really good question on, like, once students have these divestment principles and actions that they want taken, the specific ones, like what happens now that summer break is coming up. And I think that means that, a lot of the organizing will turn virtual, but I don't think it's going to stop. So I think that's, kind of the hope I stand with.
I'm glad to hear that
Right.
UNC has very specific things that they were asking for.
Yeah.
Now, you know that we have to say something good. Oh gosh, I almost forgot it that quick. What schools had conversations with their students? Oh shoot, was it North?
Brown,
Who was it? Brown?
Brown, Rutgers.
Oh, Rutgers. I didn't hear about Rutgers. I only heard about two. It was Brown. Was it Northwestern?
Maybe it was Northwestern too.
Yes, Brown.
Brown and who I had this all down in my head, and see now it's gone. But a few schools actually did sit down with their students and talk about it, and they were able to come to some good end to it. And I thought that was good.
But that's why I like the specificity that Zainab just mentioned. That's good.
Yes, yes. And that makes sense, because that way it's not just, we're not just saying, oh, it's just wide open, we want it all. Because another article that I read in the Washington Post was that they were saying that the way that these investments are done, they're not very clear. They're not like real clear cut. Like we're part
I think that's the article I sent you. Yeah.
It was, and it's not that clear cut. So that's it. Well, anyways, ladies, it's that time. I have enjoyed all of you. Renee, next time we're going to get even better. It won't be raining where you are, and we'll have better internet connectivity, right? Oh, and Zainab, I appreciate you so much. And Latrice, as always.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Yes, yes.
And take care, Zainab.
Okay.
Yeah, nice seeing you, Latrice and Renee.
Yes.
Pam.
Let's wave off.
Thank you.
And we'll come back again. Thank you. Good night, everyone.
Thank you, Pam.